friends! Today I want to talk about my favorite reads in 2022. These are not the books that were published in 2022, these are books that I've read during this year. And it was a strange reading year for me. Most of these books are my safe place from the news. As most of you know, I moved in USA from Ukraine, and there is a war going in Ukraine for the whole this year, and it's still going. It's a brutal, very aggressive Russian invasion, and the news were terrible every day, few times a day. I have really terrible news about my friends, their families, and of course it affected me, my mental health, and my reading life. I DNF'd all books with heavy topics, with trigger warnings, and these are the books that I find a safe place to be. Like these books that brought me a little bit calmness during this year, and I can't say that I can recommend this to everyone, but these were my favorite books and I want to talk about them. First, I want to start with two series. I do not have particularly a favorite from this series, but I want to mention them because if I think about this year, this series definitely are among my favorites. First of them is Inspector Armand Gamache series from Louise Penny. This is my favorite from them. By now I read, I think, 5. This is A Rule Against Murder. This series take part in Canada, in Quebec, and most of murders are taking place in the Three Pine village, or some people from Three Pines are involved in these murders. I really like this series mostly because of the atmosphere, of psychological cleverness of it. Writing is gorgeous, very beautiful, and I really like the figure of the main protagonist, Inspector Armand Gamache. He is gentle but very intelligent. He is a very interesting person, and I really think that these books are one of the best mystery novels I've read in my whole life. So I highly recommend this series, but it's no new to everyone. This is a well-loved series through the booktube and everywhere, but still I do think that it deserves the hype and the interest. I know that there is now a new TV series about Inspector Armand Gamache. I haven't tried it yet, but I really need to. Again, this is my favorite series this year. And another series is very controversial from what I've said before about my nervousness because of the war and books being my safe place, because these are definitely wartime books. Well, post-wartime books. This is Inspector Ian Rutledge series from Charles Todd, who are really a son and mother duet. These books take place in post-World War I England, and Inspector Ian Rutledge, he has mental problems after the World War, but he is now working as an investigator in Scotland Yard, and he is traveling to different counties, to different parts of England and Ireland, to investigate murders, and almost all of the books deals with post-war things. Mental health problems, orphans, widows, that kind of stuff. They are not heavy in the plot, there are not much violence, but they definitely opened my eyes about things that happen with people during the war and after the war, and it makes the news even more horrible, but also it gave me some kind of closure. I don't know, I really like the series. I do think that you can pay attention to them. This is the first one in the series, The Test of Wills. My favorite is The Search in the Dark, I think, the third one. I now read 5 of them. Again, they are not even, but I like the writing. I do not like the character of Inspector Jan Rutledge and his mental health problems. If you read these books, you know what I'm talking about. I do not like this thing in this series, but I really like the writing and all the characterization of other characters, and I really like mysteries in here, so I am reading it and it gives me something important. So this is my second honorable mention, let's say that. Then I have, I think, 9 books. I haven't counted them. Actually, I'm so sorry about that, but these are the books that I really liked during this year. And I thought about talking about them in which order, and I think maybe genre mention will be better. So let's start with classics and so on. The only classic that is in my top books in the year is The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. This is one of the first mystery novels, I'd say more sensational adventure mystery novels. There is no investigation at here, but there is a mystery in the center of the plot, and you uncover this mystery with the group of characters. I liked some of the characters more than others, but I really like the villains in this story. I like the characterization, the language was interesting, and though this is a big book, I flew through it, and this is one of my favorites of this year. Wilkie Collins, The Woman in White. I really think that this book is one of the best places to start in classics reading and in Victorian literature, because it is easy, engaging, interesting. Women characters are very different in here, and the villains are just perfect. So yeah, this is the first one. The most unexpected book on this list is Emily of Deep Valley by Maud Hart Lovelace. I have never read of this author before. I know that there is a huge Betsy Tacy series, but I have never read it, and this is one of the plans for the new year. But this book was unexpectedly wonderful. I read it because of the Kindred Spirits Club by Kate Howe. I haven't read all the books she read in this club, but this was like such a hidden gem, I think. This is a book about Emily Webster. She just finished the high school and she's trying to understand what to do next. She is living with her grandfather, and he was not very supportive in her going to college, so she stayed with him and she was taking care of him and of the house. And she's a little bit jealous of girls who went to college, but also she's trying to make her life important in the place where she found herself. And she made it happen. She found the way to make her life meaningful. And there is a beautiful love story in here, there is a beautiful friendship in here. I like this book very much, and yes, this is one of my best picks of this year, so highly recommend Emily of Deep Valley. Now let's talk about mysteries. Mystery is the most read genre this year, and I have 3 picks for you to recommend, like my best reads of the year. This is standalone. The Woman in the Library by Solari Gentile is actually a really interesting modern version of close circle mystery, and also this is a book within a book, and it works very interestingly with this subgenre. So from the beginning we are reading back and forth letters between the author of the book Woman in the Library and one of her partners from her writing group. The author lives in Australia, and the man with whom correspondence takes place lives, I think, in Boston, and the book takes place in Boston, and it begins in Boston Public Library. So the author is writing a mystery novel which started in Boston Public Library, where our main protagonist is sitting there in reading with other with other people around her, and the murder happened just outside the reading place. From the beginning, we know or suspect that one of the people in this reading room was a killer, but we don't know whom. And our main protagonist makes an acquaintances with all people there, and there began a friendship and a love story. I didn't care about love interest at all, and actually I can't say that I care a lot about friendship, though it was very interesting to try to pick who from their group was a killer. But the most important and interesting part of this book was that while we see the back and forth letters from the author and the man in Boston evolve, we know more about this man in Boston, whom she wrote inside the book. So he is one of her characters. He became more and more aggressive, and we know more things about him that are disturbing. And the book, parts of which the author is sending to her correspondent friend, became not only just parts of a book, but an instrument to make him do things or say things or show himself in different situations. So this is not only the book with the mystery inside its plot, but it's only like an instrument to uncover the truth in another mystery, which makes it more interesting. Like this, everything now has double meaning. First, it is like some clues for the book, and second, they are hints for not us readers, but her correspondence friend reader to do things or to say things or to act in some ways. I do think that sometimes it was done a little bit clumsily, but sometimes it was done almost brilliantly, and I really think that this is like very interesting and unique mystery novel. So yes, I highly recommend Women in the Library by Sulari Gentile. Next I have a thriller. I can't say that I have read a lot of thrillers. This one I picked up because it was a Gold Dagger winner, I think. We Begin at the End by Chris Whitaker. This is a heavy book, like a really heavy book. It has the topics of domestic violence, of child abuse, of child's poverty, but also it is beautiful in its human portraits, in characterization. It's beautifully written. It tells us a story about two young siblings. A girl, I think, is in her teens, and a very young boy, 3 or 4 years old, who are living with their very troubled mother in a small California town. And in their mother's past was this big tragedy when her sister was killed, and the boy from her friendship group was put in jail. And so at the beginning of this novel, he come home from the jail. He met his friendship group. One of them is mother of these 2 kids, and another of them is the policeman of this town. After a few days, mother of these 2 kids was found dead, violently dead, and now the policeman tries to uncover who did it. The most the first suspect is this friend that came out from the jail, but also the mother was a very troubled person, and she has lots of very troubled acquaintances. And also there is her teenage girl who really wanted a revenge, and he is doing wrong things. So we have these two main protagonists, a policeman and a teenage girl, and it is unexpectedly, yes, very hard, but also heartwarming book with beautiful characters. I'd say something like California noir with the child protagonist. Yes, strange, but very beautiful. Not very easy read, but still thriller. Highly recommend. One of the best books I read this year. We Begin at the End by Chris Whitaker. And the last mystery novel that I gave 5 stars and is one of the best books I've read this year is the last book that I read this year. And yes, it just went straight to the top. This is Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz. This is a rather old book. I think it was written in 2013 or something like that. And again, this is a mystery inside a mystery. But I really think this is one of the most brilliant books I've read, maybe the best book I've read this year. And I highly recommend it to all mystery lovers, and not only. So we begin to read this book along with Susan Ryland, who is an editor, and she began to read the book called Magpie Murders from one of their most famous author in their publishing house, Alan Conway. We read this book aside her, and at the end she can't find the last chapter. So we read the whole mystery novel, almost the half of this book, and we don't know who the murderer is. And we are frustrated, as well as Susan. And the next day she found out that Alan Conway was found dead. He fell down from the tower in his house. And she began to investigate, like a sleuth, what happened to him, and her main goal is to find missing pages, because she, as well as us, we all want to know how the Magpie Murders mystery ends, and also now we want to know who killed Alan Conway. If you like Midsummer Murders TV series, this is very much in that vein. The murder itself, both murders, are very gruesome, with a lot of blood, but all characters are very cozy, and they are very typical for Midsummer Murders. It all takes place in small villages, and another thing that I think is very clever in this book, the investigator in Midsummer Murder book, like the book inside the book, is very likable. We love him from the very beginning. He is very Armand Gamache style investigator, and Susan Ryland is not that likable. She smokes, she has a messy love life. She is not very nice person herself. She thinks poorly about other people. But you know, we have these investigators, sleuths, inside this book, and it gave this contrast and variety, and this was very entertaining. Also, I read it as an audiobook mostly, and they have 2 narrators, one for the book that is inside the book and another for Susan Ryland story. I do think that this is a brilliant way to separate one from the other. I highly recommend this book and highly recommend audiobook, and can't wait to read the second one from the series. This is the first one, and we have another one in this series, and I am very excited that I have more to read. Now let's talk about historical fiction. I have first the most dear to me book this year, and also the most unexpected one. This is Olga by Bernhard Schlink. I took this book from the library because my oldest daughter name is Olga, and it was just fun for me to read a book with the same name in the title. And it ended up beautiful historical fiction book. Again, this is a book about World War II. This is a book about a young girl who fell in love but never actually was married to her love interest. This is a book about, I like how it tells here. Olga tells the story of a woman who, like many of her generation, is forced to live below her capacities, next to men who live above theirs. This is the perfect explanation of this book. This book has unusual structure. In first, we have a story like about Olga's youth. The second one, we have a story telling from the point of view of a boy to whom she was like a nanny, something like that, nanny figure, let's say that. She took care of him sometimes when she was much older woman, and she told him something about her past. And also there is the third part, when he found the letters from her to her love interest and some other documents. So there is like a epistolary novel in the third part of it. It shows a different points of view, slightly different, on this woman. Also, this shows slightly different nuances of how we tell our stories, like in the middle of it, of how we tell the same story when we are much older, and how we explain ourselves on the paper. This is very quiet, very gentle novel, not very engaging, definitely not fast-paced, but it touched something inside me. I really like this kind of books. If you liked Dutch House by Anne Patchett, if you liked The Reader by Bernhard Schlink, maybe you understand what I'm talking about. These quiet books with deep understanding of the character in the middle of it. This is one of these books, and I highly recommend it, like a historical fiction. I like a woman's novel about woman life. I liked it, and it had a great impact on me, I think. So yeah, highly recommend Olga by Bernhard Schlink. Another historical fiction that I can recommend, actually I thought when I began to read it that this is a mystery. I now can't say this is a mystery. There is a mystery inside this plot that spices it a little bit, but I think this is more historical fiction, Death at Greenway by Laurie Raider Day. This book takes place in Agatha Christie house, Greenway. This is a huge mansion where kids were taken to during London Blitz to live in safety, not with their parents. Like, there are some guardians and a few nurses that who take care of them, and they live in this huge house very far from their parents. Actually, this is a story of true nurses that take care of them. The mystery is that both of these girls are actually not really nurses, and they both have a secret in their past, and they hide their past, and also they try to live through the war, being young and being scared and having some dreams, but also some past, and also these kids that they need to take care of. This is a beautiful snapshot of the history. This is another side of the London Blitz that I've never read about. This is the story of kids being separated with their parents at that age that they forget their parents and can't remember their faces or their, anything. And they lived there for a few years and they forgot about having a parents at all. This is very touching story, but also again, this is not about the kids, this is about these two young girls and a little bit of mystery and a little bit of secrets, but also about love and life and London Blitz. So yes, I highly recommend this as a historical fiction, Death at Greenway by Laurie Raider Day. Then we have modern fiction, and I have a book that is rather controversial. Sally Rooney, Beautiful World, Where Are You? This was the first book I read this year, and yes, it became one of the favorites. Now, I can't say that this is the book that I will reread anytime soon, and I definitely can't say that this is a book that I can recommend to anyone. No. Be very cautious trying this book, because for one, it has lots of sex scenes, sometimes even violent, and I do not like it. I am not a fan of sex scenes in the books, but also this book touched something very important about my generation life now, and I even can't say what, which is rather strange. This is a story of two women and their love interests. Mostly this is a story about this famous writer who is afraid of her fame, and she is trying to hide in this old house that she bought. She met a man on Tinder, and their relationships are very complicated, but also she has a friend, and she's writing letters to her friend. So this book plays on a contrast with, even on language, with her messy love life in real life, and here the language is very cinematical. It is written like a movie script. Brief sentences, sometimes there are sentences like, and now you can see only the shadows on the wall, something like that. So it shows you where to look and what to see, but it never goes deep inside the characters. But also there are these letters which are gentle and thoughtful, and they're not actually about the life, they're more about philosophical things, about sometimes ecology, sometimes about books they've read, sometimes, something very general. And reading all this, you understand that maybe this life going on in her head, about which she's writing to her friend, is actually more important to her than all this messy being. And maybe this is actually the clue that she doesn't know how to deal actually with her life, because she doesn't really is interested in living it. She is interested in living something absolutely different, which exists only in her head, and the problems that she is really thoughtful about are bigger problems of the society, not her general day-to-day problems. I do think that Sally Rooney is like a new Jane Austen. Not that she is such a pleasant read like Jane Austen, and not that she will survive so many historical periods and people in many years will still read her. I have no idea. But I do think that she found something and has an ability to show small details and snippets of our life right now, which are really important, and maybe we even do not understand how important her thoughts about life is before reading this. I found myself nodding head and saying, yes, I understand you, many times, though my life is as far as can be from the life of the characters in this book. Yes, I am the same age maybe, but my background is completely different. My profession is different. I have a husband and 2 kids, and my life is absolutely, completely different. But still, I have something in common with this woman, and this is very interesting for me. So yes, this is my second Sally Rooney. I've read Conversation with Friends, but I have never read Normal People, and I'm afraid of that because, again, sex scenes is my absolutely least favorite part of this book. But there is something important in it, and even if I can't press my finger on what it is, it still is. So yes, I do think that you may consider reading Sally Rooney Conversation with Friends, though be careful picking up this book. The other book that I want to talk about is My Name is Lucy Barton by Elizabeth Strout. I can't find my copy, but here the picture. This book made me cry for a week. Lucy Barton is our main protagonist. She is a mother of 2. She has a happy marriage. And she made a rather simple operation, but got some infection and is slowly, very slowly recovering from this, laying in the hospital. Her husband can't be with her because he's taking care of their kids. And her mom came to be with her in the hospital, to sit near her and make her, company and make her more comfortable. Lucy Barton haven't seen her mom for many years, and now they're just talking. This is a very small book about mother-daughter relationships, about family relationships, about our childhood memories and how our parents understand these memories and do they remember them, and vice versa. What was meaningful to our parents in our childhood, and how do we remember this? Also, this is about very messy relationships in the family, and they have rather strange relationships with her brother and all the things. But it was very thoughtful, very beautiful, very emotional book. And again, it made me cry for a week. Maybe that's because I was very far away from my mom at that time, and she was in the war-torn country, and I thought that I can lose her every single moment, and it was painful. And this book was painful, but also it was like a good pain. It gave me some kind of release. The last book that I want to talk about is Arusha and the End of Time. This was my favorite middle grade series from this year. I have read 3 of the 4 books, I think, and I highly appreciate how the author first make the characters, and second tell the story about absolutely unknown religion and myths for me, and explains it beautifully and also makes it very engaging and fun. So yes, these are my 10 favorite books from the 2022. I hope you had a great reading year, and I really hope that next year will be much better. Thank you for watching this. Bye!